You are live.
Welcome, everybody, to the March 2023 Annapolis Transportation Board meeting. I'm glad we could convene. It's chilly but clear and nice outside today. So thanks for joining us.
And it's the first day of spring now.
Yeah,
Yep, right.
That's right.
Vernal equinox.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have a frost advisory tonight. So
30 degrees.
I've got a wonderful cartoon celebrating the arrival of spring that says, I'm so excited about springtime that I wet my plants.
Very funny.
Okay. Let's plunge into the agenda. The very first item is a call to order, a roll call, and approval of the agenda and minutes. We have no minutes this time, but they will be coming. And so we will postpone that for the time being. Tara is here and can look at the screen in order to take the roll, so we can dispense with that very quickly. And that just leaves approval of the agenda as distributed. I'll take. All right. Second. Anyone?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
All right. The agenda is approved. Thank you. It's my pleasure to welcome to our meeting tonight Brian O'Malley, who is President and Chief Executive Officer of the Central Maryland Transportation Alliance. I had the pleasure of hearing him give a talk at a Friday meeting in the Eastport last week, Friday morning, and was so impressed that I thought we could benefit by getting his perspective. And it is different perhaps than ours, but I think he can usefully expand our minds. Annapolis has problems that are both the same as everybody else and then somewhat unique. And I have asked Brian to, as much as he can, to try to tailor his remarks to problems that he may see in Annapolis that he could help us with. And so with that, I will turn the meeting over to Brian O'Malley.
Great. Thank you, Kurt. And it's great to be with you all this evening, and an honor to be invited to speak with you. I'm going to talk for between 10 to 15 minutes, and I want to touch on, who we are as a transportation advocacy organization, how we think about transportation, some of our priorities, what I understand is one of your priorities, and have a discussion about those. And so I think I'll begin just by explaining that, well, actually, I'm going to share my screen. That's what I'll begin by doing. So you can hopefully see. Let me see if I can. There we go. Whoops. Few pop-ups.
There we go.
Can I have a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you can see my opening slide? Okay, great. I see
Yes.
a thumbs up. Thanks. And is there anyone who's participating who cannot see the visuals? Should I be describing what we're seeing?
I can see.
Okay. Thanks. Well, if anyone needs a description, just please let me know. As Kurt said, I'm with an organization called the Central Maryland Transportation Alliance. We're based in Baltimore. We consider the Central Maryland in our name, referring to the region that includes Anne Arundel County, Howard County, Baltimore County, Baltimore City, Harford County, essentially the greater Baltimore metropolitan region. Of course, Carroll County, where I worked for 5 years. And I'll get a little bit more into who we are and what we do, but I thought I'd start just by talking about how we think about transportation. And I like to, everyone loves to, a lot of times when people talk about transportation, it's to complain. We sort of take it for granted until it doesn't work. And so I'll get into thinking more forward-looking and proactively about what great transportation would mean, but I'd like to start by asking what's wrong with this picture. And here's the first picture. I just have a couple. Can anyone tell me what's something wrong with this picture?
There's too many cars.
Too many cars. What's wrong with too many cars?
No people.
No people?
Well, it's just, it's pollution, it's time spent on the road, it's lack of parking, you can go on and on.
Mm-hmm. Pollution, time spent on the road, lack of parking.
Most of the cars
Someone said no
appear to have a
people.
Single driver or a single occupant.
Well, you can't tell that, though.
But they-
You can see most of them appear to have a single person.
so it's most of these are probably single occupant, so it's a lot of space for not that many people. Okay, thanks. Here's another one. This is from northern Anne Arundel County. Does anyone recognize where this is?
Near the airport?
Yeah, near the airport.
Mhm.
This is between the the BWI Business District light rail stop and Northrop Grumman. There's down this road, there's Northrop Grumman, there's a lot of employers, hotels, different light manufacturing. What's wrong with this picture?
The bike lane ends.
No,
Yeah,
the
so you-
pedestrians are forced to walk out in traffic.
Yep.
Looks
And
like a
in the-
place that was a bus shelter, maybe once upon a time.
This concrete platform, or might have been a bus shelter at one time. You can see sometimes people call these desire paths or goat paths, but you can see where worn into the grass and dirt, there's a path where people walk every day. And so there's no sidewalk for people, but this is the way to walk between the light rail station and thousands of jobs that are down the road. And so they have to walk in the dirt. And then when they get to the guardrail, there's too much brush and whatever. So they have to go on the side of the guardrail with where the cars are and sort of walk on the shoulder of the road.
Wow.
And so it's not really a safe or comfortable choice to commute by public transportation and walk the last quarter mile or so to the job. The flip side of that is, what does it mean to have great transportation? If you visualize in your mind, what does great transportation look like? I got this from a car commercial. You know, there's a whole industry sort of selling us images like this, maybe the convertible with the top down on a nice spring day. I did a Google image search for great transportation, and this was the top hit. I think it's in Sweden. And it shows that the caption said something about lots of modes of transportation visible.
Stockholm, I think I wrote on that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I've never been. Only via Google. And this is access to getting somewhere you need to go. This is an MTA mobility van taking someone to healthcare, so you can get to the entrance to the hospital. You know, maybe great transportation means getting to the person you want to visit, or the job, or the school you're trying to get to, or a medical appointment, or getting your groceries, healthy food. So we encourage folks to think about what it means when we have great transportation. I also like to use quotes, and I often start with this one. Would a volunteer be willing to read this quote out loud?
I will. It's Taylor. We shape
Thanks.
our buildings, thereafter they shape us. Winston Churchill.
Yeah, thanks. He was talking about rebuilding Parliament after World War II when it was bombed. But I think this applies a lot to transportation. We shape our transportation infrastructure, but sometimes we overlook that once it's built, it shapes our lives. And I have a couple of, I think 3 more quotes that get at how it shapes our lives. This one comes from Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam. And just to keep things moving, I'll read this. Each additional 10 minutes in daily commuting cuts involvement in community affairs by 10%. Fewer public meetings attended, fewer petitions signed, fewer church services attended, less volunteering, etc. So as we build transportation infrastructure that leads to more time spent commuting, it has an impact on civic life. That's one way it shapes us. This is a quote from the Baltimore Sun. This gentleman, Byron Haskins, said, "People like me are always frustrated and looking for something else, but there's only the Beltway. It's horrible and there's no alternative." So that's another way. If we build transportation systems and then we feel like we have no choice, and in his case, his only option to get to work is to drive on the Beltway, that's shaping his life and taking away his freedom and choices. And this last one comes from an NPR story covering research that found that air pollution is disproportionately caused by white Americans' consumption of goods and services, but disproportionately inhaled by Black and Hispanic Americans. So when we build transportation infrastructure, it is contributing to an uneven playing field, to disparities in who benefits and who is harmed by the results of our transportation behaviors. So that's what we mean by we build our transportation infrastructure and thereafter it shapes our lives. And so we're very concerned about outcomes in Maryland and wanting to influence the transportation decisions to produce better outcomes for all of us. And so that gets into why we, who we are and why we do what we do at the Transportation Alliance. These are a few photos of us. The upper left are a gathering of board members. Top middle is Donna, who is a retiree who volunteers with us from time to time, talking to folks at a festival. Upper right is partnering with a group of protesters, calling for or supporting a piece of legislation in Annapolis. Lower right is one of our former employees, Ashley, interviewing someone about his transportation trips. Lower middle is me at a rally holding a sign, and lower left is my colleague Danielle riding during the pandemic and masked up. And this is our website. I'm going to talk a little bit about two of our initiatives that are featured here, the report card and Transportation 101, and I'll close by a third that's not featured here. But these are some of the things we do to try to shape outcomes. And I won't read the names of our board members, but this slide shows you who's on our board. I'll summarize it by telling you that it's made up of civic leaders from the greater Baltimore region who may not work for an organization that has transportation in its name, but they think transportation is critical to their bottom line, whether they're a corporation trying to be profitable, whether they're a philanthropic foundation trying to support better outcomes for people, or whether they're an issue-based organization trying to affect social equity or saving the environment, et cetera. They all agree that transportation is critical to that work. So I'll quickly go into three initiatives of ours. The first is the Transportation Report Card. We created this in 2015 and we update it about every 3 years. The most recent one was the 2020 report card, and so we're due for one in 2023. And we copied shamelessly the Chesapeake Bay Foundation's State of the Bay report card. After looking at report cards in all different sectors from all different parts of the country, we really liked theirs. We copied them and picked 3 themes, and under each theme, we picked indicators that tell us how we're doing. And the idea was to benchmark the Baltimore region against peer regions using the same metrics every time we update it so we can track over time if we're getting better. And our 3 themes are a great transportation grows the economy. The opposite of that is that a bad transportation system is a drag on your economy. The second is that a great transportation system gives you choices. The opposite of that is that a bad transportation system cuts off your choices and you're stuck. And the third is a great transportation system keeps you and your environment healthy. And obviously, the inverse of that is that a great transportation system harms human health and harms the environment. And so we chose indicators that tell us how we're doing on each of these and graded on a scale compared to the other regions in the country that are of similar size. So keep an eye out. We'll be releasing the latest update in the fall, and we'll put out press about it. Second initiative I'll mention of ours is an effort to help lift up other people who want to be engaged in transportation. And I'm going to ask for your help with this one. Transportation 101 is a free workshop series that we've been offering since 2017. We offer it twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall. It's a series, so when you sign up, it's free to you, but you are committing your time. This spring, it will be in May and June, and it'll be Wednesday evenings in person, right near Penn Station in Baltimore. And it's open to people from anywhere in the greater metropolitan region. We'd love to have folks from Annapolis. If you can budget the time to be there, we'll feed you a catered dinner from a different locally owned business each night, and provide lots of interesting guest speakers and activities aimed at deepening your knowledge about transportation, building your network, and developing your skills to do advocacy in your community. These are some photos. It's usually a lot of fun and very interesting, sometimes with field trips and guest speakers. In this scene, there's actors from a theater company who come in and do role-playing exercises, kind of like what medical residents go through, learning how to interview patients. But in this case, you're learning how to talk to neighbors or your boss or your coworkers about transportation issues to be a better advocate. We have a call for applicants right now. And so when I'm finished talking, I'll drop in the chat the link, but the deadline to apply is April 12th. So there's still a few weeks to look at the application and consider applying. And I hope you'll look at it yourself and think about it, and think about forwarding the information to someone you know, because we'd love to have folks from the Annapolis area involved. And the third and final initiative I'll talk about before I get to what you're working on and some discussion is the IIJA, or some people call it the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. The acronym IIJA stands for Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And I'm not going to read this quote, but I'll summarize it. This was from the Georgetown Climate Center. And essentially what it was saying when this law passed was that Congress is giving more money to states than ever before for transportation. And it could make the climate crisis even worse than it already is, or it could be part of the solution. But the range of possible outcomes is that wide because Congress didn't put many strings on it. And so the states, it's up to the states to decide how they're going to spend that money. And they could keep spending it in ways that causes more greenhouse gas emissions, or they could spend it in ways that addresses the crisis and sets us on the right path. Second quote is in a similar vein. This was from the Public Health on Call podcast that the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School publishes. And Dr. Keisha Pollack Porter was a guest, and she said a similar thing about racial justice, that Congress is putting so much money towards this that the states could make racial disparities caused by transportation even worse, or they could make a shift and start making things better. And so with that wide of a range of outcomes, it's really up to us to influence how Maryland spends these huge amounts of federal dollars that are flowing. And when we look at the federal dollars, the donut graph on the left shows that 13% are in what's called discretionary programs. Those are grants that states have to compete for. They have to apply for and try to win. But the red part, the 87%, are in formulas that flow to states every year sort of regardless of, the states don't have to apply for them. They just, the money flows. And when I have another slide that breaks out of the formulas that come to states like Maryland, the two biggest that account for over 3/4 of this pie chart are the National Highway Performance Program and the Surface Transportation Block Grant. And the federal government, the Federal Highway Administration, will tell states, they have it on their website, you can spend these funds on maintenance or on new capacity, on widening roads and highways. You can also flex up to 50% of these funds to non-highway projects, to transit, to pedestrian, bicycle infrastructure, to electric vehicle infrastructure. But states view these as the highway formulas. And when we asked the past MDOT secretary about it, he said, no, highway formulas have to be spent on highways. So we have a lot of education to do, both at the county level and at the state level, that these funds can be flexed and that we should be asking for support for public transportation, pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, as well as prioritizing maintenance of our roads and highways before widening more. I'll close by saying that Kurt told me that one of the things your group has worked on is advocating for fare-free transit in Annapolis. And I thought about what's worked for us over the years as advocacy strategies. And I think the way we've done things is to do both research and sort of knowledge-based advocacy, putting out white papers or reports, drawing on best practices and feeding that to decision makers. At the same time, we also try to lift up the voices of the people affected. So we connect transit riders with reporters to be quoted in their stories. We film videos and publish the videos and use them in our advocacy, put them out on social media. We work with transit riders, invite them to testify at public meetings and share their stories. And so I would advise talking to the riders. You could start maybe with a survey of riders and then ask for contact information and follow up, as well as looking at best practices around the country and feeding that information to the decision makers to educate them about what works elsewhere and what's possible here. So Kurt, I'd like to pause there. My contact information is on this last slide, and I'd love to hear questions or comments or reactions to what I presented.
Thank you so much, Brian, and yes, members of the board and others, please engage in conversation as the spirit moves. John, Giannetti?
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Brian, thanks for making your presentation to us. I think it's really good that there are organizations and healthy organizations that are out there advocating for transportation. Do you find yourself advocating mostly for transit, or how do you is there certain policies that you're going after? It seems like with your presentation, and a lot of really what the Transportation Board does here is we talk about transit and multimodal, but I wonder, like, do you guys get involved with bicycling at all or other things like that, or is it mostly mass transit?
Yeah, thanks, John. The short answer is yes. We focus mostly on public transportation. We're set up to focus on all modes, and we've tended to do most of our advocacy around public transportation. I think there's two reasons for that. One is maybe three reasons. The first one is we've, as a nation and as a state and locally, we have invested heavily in our building out the interstate highway system. We built an amazing interstate highway system, but that's largely been completed. And now we've been spending a few decades widening it, trying to solve congestion, and it's not really working. Congestion has gotten worse, not better. And so we feel like that isn't something we want to advocate for is widening more roads and highways. On the bike and pedestrian side, we do advocate for those things. There are some organizations that are focused on, especially on bicycle infrastructure, and so we tend to support their work and sign on as partners. But we do care about it. We are advocating to MDOT to flex funds to support bicycle infrastructure, and think it's an important part of a healthy transportation network.
Thank you.
Beth, you have
Yes.
your hand up?
Yes. Brian, I was, along with Kurt and John Purnell, are the three that worked on the Fare Free transit. And we did do a extensive survey around the country for people that have Fare Free transit, and just what their experiences were, what they encountered, how it worked for them, and all that kind of stuff. And we put it in our report. But the thing that I wanted to ask you about was, you said to do a survey, and we considered that. That takes a lot longer. So we decided at this point not to do it. But even if we did a survey and we got people's responses, and then you said get contact information to follow up, how would you suggest using that? Where I'm having, based on what's happened here in Annapolis on our initial, in fact, it's been more than initial. We've met with different people and on the Fare Free, and it doesn't really get a good, I don't know what you would say. It doesn't get consideration, let's say, very, very highly. So what do you suggest if we did a survey, and how we could use that and to sway the powers that be, that this would be a good way to go?
Great. Good question. So yeah, I'd love to see the report you did and see what you found when you surveyed around the country, when you did a review around the country. So maybe Kurt can point me in the
I
right
will
direction.
send that to you.
Great.
And I owe a copy of the same thing to Marcus Moore.
Great. Regarding my suggestion to survey riders, I've found that when I testify at hearings or get meetings with decision makers, especially elected officials, they are interested in learning information that I can provide, but they also recognize that my job is to advocate. I'm sort of a paid advocate for a cause, and they always are keenly interested when people who are there because they're taking time out of their, they're there on their private interests, like their personal interest, speaking in first person about their experiences, especially if they're a constituent. It carries a lot of weight. And so the trick is, how do you, when for us anyway, when we're doing advocacy, how do we find those people? And it starts by listening and doing outreach and tabling at transit stations and talking to folks at bus stops or train stations. Sometimes connecting people through partner organizations, promoting ourselves on social media. Doing a survey of folks could be a way to find out who is responding that they care about the issue of Fare Free transit, and then follow up with them and ask them, would they be willing to share their comments with their elected officials, or at a meeting, or on a video that you might put together. We had good luck there was a bill called the Transit Safety and Investment Act that was basically trying to get our Maryland legislature to mandate that the executive branch at least invest in the upkeep and maintenance of the Maryland Transit Administration, the transit system that runs the MARC train and the light rail and bus fleet and so forth. And we didn't get through the first legislative session, and then we came back and we did get it through the second one, and then the governor vetoed it and the legislature overrode the veto. And so I think we got a sense to see what was more effective the second time around. And I think the second time around, we had a lot more voices of folks. We did a Zoom rally where people shared their stories about how the maintenance problems and breakdowns of the transportation system were affecting their lives. And then we took the video of that and edited into short snippets, and promoted that video on social media and tagged folks. And so a survey or tabling at bus stops could be ways to find people who care about this issue and who might be willing to participate in a rally or a video or testimony at a meeting. That's what I was suggesting.
Thanks. John Purnell?
Yeah, Brian, thank you so much for talking to us tonight. It's very informative. I do, as one of the Fare Free persons, want to echo the best comments, and I think we should probably look at surveys. I mean, we did discuss it and we did choose not to do it, and I think that was a potential error. And now you've shown us a way to not just do surveys, but produce a lot of content out of the interactions with the public that can then be used to advocate. I wanted to ask you about the airport. Have you drawn any conclusions about BWI as a part of our transportation system, and specifically with regard to Annapolis?
So we haven't gotten involved in issues of noise and air traffic.
I'm more thinking I didn't mean to bring that up. I actually know way too much about that in my other job. No, I'm more talking about as a frictionless way to get from the state capitol to the airport. And not to mention the enormous number of jobs at Fort Meade and the Cyber Command.
Yeah, so we have a huge employment center at Fort Meade. We have another huge employment center in the BWI, both on premises of the airport, but also in the business district surrounding it. And in both cases, those are also, there's a lot of high opportunity jobs for people who may not have a 4-year college degree, who can earn a relatively higher wage and also have a career ladder you can advance through on the job training. And so it's good for Central Maryland if people can get to those jobs, and it's good for the employers if they have a larger labor pool to draw from. So I think it's definitely in our enlightened self-interest to make sure there's good connections. And access to our state government is also important for democracy. And Annapolis is one of the few state capitals that you can't get to by rail. And it's quite a journey by bus, and can be difficult if you're trying to testify and you're subject to the whims of the hearing schedule, but you're also subject to the bus schedule to get yourself home afterwards. I've often seen people plan their whole day to come testify and then have to leave without testifying because they have to catch their bus. And that's a real limiting factor on access to democracy. But better connections between Annapolis, Fort Meade, and the airport and its business district are really important. I know that there was a regional transit plan, and then Anne Arundel County does some also county level transit planning and looks at identifying the key corridors and the challenge is resources. We need more investment in running more frequent connections between those places. It can be difficult to commute by transit if the schedule is very sparse, if the bus only comes every 30 minutes or every hour. And so running those buses more frequently requires operating dollars. And we're advocating to the federal government to let states use the federal transit funds for operating. They haven't since the early 80s. And we're also advocating to the state level to invest in running transit more frequently. And we need to be looking at new connections as well. So that's a big lift. It's a good question, and I agree with you that those are really critical destinations. I wish there was an easy answer, but I don't know of one.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Tara?
Yeah, having my fiscal hat on, there's a lot of advocacy here, and you spoke about working with riders and getting them to meetings to speak up. And I just wanted to understand, you also mentioned that they have issues with attending meetings and then having to get home if they're reliant on the bus schedule. So I'm just not sure, are you paying them to attend these meetings, or are they really coming because you've encouraged them to do so and they're doing so on their own dime?
Yeah, we've never paid anybody to attend a meeting. We have rented a van and provided transportation, especially for folks to come to the state capitol, because of the challenges I described. So we have provided that sort of as our option to carpool together in a rented van, once or twice, not many times, but we have done that before. And we've also put people in touch, like if I hear that you are interested in testifying at a hearing, Tara, I might put you in touch with Beth, who I heard was also planning to go, and see if she could give you a ride, so helping people network and carpool to try to help solve their transportation challenges. But we've never paid anybody to do it. And I don't think we would probably, but we do try to find people who are interested and then help them. The other thing we do is we provide encouragement and coaching, because some people, if you're not used to it, it can be intimidating to go speak at a meeting. And so we'll help people understand how it's going to work and help them, they can practice their remarks to us or things like that.
Well, we all could use that, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you talked about the transportation report card, that was interesting. And I was curious what you viewed as communities of comparable size.
Mm-hmm. In that case, we were comparing the greater Baltimore metropolitan region, which is it's the metropolitan statistical area is the technical name for it. So
the Baltimore MSA.
Correct.
So anything from, okay, thank you.
And so there are 20 MSAs in the continental US that are between 2 million and 4 million in population. Baltimore's one of them. The others include Kansas City, Greater Minneapolis.
I'm good. You can
Charlotte.
look it up online. It's familiar. Thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you. Next is Carol.
I just have a comment in response, Brian, to your description of accommodating transportation for people who are coming to the Capitol in the cause, basically, to promote by attending meetings and I guess advocating the enhancement of transportation. I personally, because I do go back and forth to Baltimore now recently quite extensively on public transportation, find it a sad commentary that the capital of Maryland is so inaccessible by public transportation that we cannot allow people who are individually advocating something, for instance, transportation, to find a way to Annapolis publicly. It kind of puts us in a backwoods almost. And I can tell you as a bus rider between Baltimore and Annapolis that that's maybe a humorous but a fitting description of how remote this area is by public transportation for people who would be in a situation where they would take the time and the trouble and the expense and the commitment to take their civic duty so seriously to come to the legislature to speak. Annapolis is not a locally, regionally, or nationally accessible location by public transportation. If I wanted to go to Wilmington, Delaware, well, that's not a good example because it's on a train route, but I'm sure there are cities comparable. I lived in Springfield, Illinois, for instance. There are cities comparable in the nation in size and remoteness to Annapolis, which are head and shoulders above us in accessibility for the full range of the American population, not just the disadvantaged. And so I'm just commenting on a discouraging aspect of what you're doing obviously is admirable to get people here and to take on the burden of doing it as an organization. But it's just another indicator of how desperate the situation is. I have some personal knowledge now about the commuter bus that goes between Baltimore and Annapolis, and it is discouraging personal knowledge about how limited it is. So it's the kind of thing that those people would ride if it existed as a really viable means of connection between those.
Carol, is that the 70 you're talking about?
What?
Is that the MTA 70?
No, I know all about the MTA 70, and it's quite functional, actually. It's very old and very functional. This is the Academy bus that runs through Annapolis and from Kent Island.
Yeah, Kurt, it's the 210, 215. They run Monday through Friday during rush hour, morning and evening, to go to Baltimore. Is that correct, Carol?
Yes, on a very limited basis and almost a humorously limited basis, because what I personally discovered is that bus is established basically for people who are Baltimoreans who work for the state government and need to get to Annapolis. And so you cannot, as an Annapolitan, and I've confirmed this, presume that you can get on a bus going the other direction from the way that people from Baltimore are traveling. That may not be true. In fact, the bus driver told me to just hop right on when I was going from Annapolis to Baltimore in the morning. But the direction in the morning is from Baltimore to Annapolis. And that's, it's obviously funny, and I got some humor out of this situation, but when you think about public transit between places of such significance as Baltimore and Annapolis, and you can only take the bus one way in the morning and one way in the afternoon, it's like, a third world country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for a lively discussion. And our thanks go to Brian O'Malley for an excellent presentation. You have stimulated our brain cells, and we're all the better for it.
Thanks, Kurt. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And with that, I'd like to press on to the rest of the agenda. And the next one is an update from the City Council. Alderwoman Karma O'Neill is not here, but we're more than adequately blessed by the attendance of Rhonda Pindell Charles. Alderwoman.
Good evening, everyone. I do not have an update, but I'm always glad to be here, and that's all I can say at this point. I have not communicated with Karma about tonight's meeting, and I do know Alderman Savage is not available tonight either. So just to let you know, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, thanks for dropping in on us.
Certainly.
The next item on the agenda is Director Marcus Moore. You're muted, Marcus.
Good evening, everyone. Don't have a whole lot more from our February meeting. To give you a little continuation about our electric vehicle procurement. We did get a chance to go to visit our cousins, if you will, to the west in Frederick County to look at their infrastructure, how they set it up to be ready for these buses that we are the final stages of acceptance and to get them to be built. We are still looking at the spring, late spring of next year, the end of the fiscal year, FY24. These will be two buses, full scale. They'll most likely go on the downtown shuttle, what we used to call the circulator. Now it's the Magenta shuttle. So those are still in production, if you will. So it's pretty exciting to see what we need to do to set it all up with a BGE and everything. That's going to be about an 8 or 9 month process to get our location at on Chickapin Round Road ready for these buses in the spring. Other than that, we do have the golf carts as we talked about that will really start in earnest once the weather breaks, probably the middle of April after Easter. And there'll be a Friday, Saturday, Sunday running the free service downtown all the way through as best we can to November. But we're doing our best to do, the Go Green and, electric vehicle procurement and all. But that's all we have as far as updates right now, as we're, putting our budgets together for this next fiscal year. We'll probably have more to report in May as we go through council and approval of the budgets for FY24.
Marcus, can you educate us a little bit on what the charging infrastructure is, both for the larger vehicles and the smaller? Are there multiple charge points, or do they all come back to the mothership for charging? How does it work? That's
a very good question, because the smaller vehicles that we have can be charged just like at your home, but that will be like 10 or 12 hours. It's called a level 1. And most of our garages that we have in the city, it's a level 2, which we can get from, let's just say 1 bar, all the way almost to empty. We can get it in like 5 or 6 hours. So when you look at a larger bus, we're looking at a level 3 charger as we look at charging something that large to go 130 miles per se. The big pulls on something of that with a regenerative motor, and I'm not a mechanical person, but as you drive it, you're regenerating the battery. So the hardest part with any kind of electrical vehicle is, of course, weight, topography of the land, and the stop and starts and how much weight you have going on. So right now with our electric carts, we're making about 6 hours. So you'll hear people talk about range with hours or miles. So what we're looking at the infrastructure for the larger vehicle, bringing, if we have to have, BGE come out, and when we look at something larger in the back, I'm trying to think of the word, it's escaping right now, but a level 3 charger.
That's like 100 kilowatts or so. That's major power.
It's major power, major work, 6 or 7 months worth of work, and development with maybe a third party to do that. You're absolutely right. So our little carts, we can do that at our home base, and from like, there's 8 bars. So if we're down like halfway down, we can charge it back up in 3 to 5 hours. If we go to one of the garages, which has a level 2, which can do most of your vehicles, we can do it in a lot less time. So for the bigger buses, we're looking at a level 3 charger, and that's where we need to start working on that, literally come spring, because that's going to be a 6-month ordeal. These 2 new buses will come with a charging port that can charge 3 buses. They'll come with it, even though we're just getting 2. And you build upon that. So more to follow as we learn more. And like I mentioned, we went to Frederick, we had our civil engineer, our fleet maintenance manager for the city that asked those kind of questions about it. So that just happened last Wednesday. So more to follow with reports that come out of it. But Kurt, that's a very good question. When you look at level 1, 2, and 3. So where I live in Annapolis, so the Giant, there's a charger there. I'm sure that's a level 2 charger, or like at Pitt Moyer in our garages. I don't think we have anything in the city at present that's a level 3. So we had to buy for our cart.
Yeah, you have to go to the Tesla supercharger to get that.
Yeah, I don't know what Sam's Club and all those places have. They're probably still everybody at level 2s. So, you know, that's the thing. We're getting something that can charge a lot faster. So one of the things that of the big cost, when you look at, you know, having one bus, whether it's diesel or gas, to make a 12-hour day, you can pretty much make it even if you're only getting 7, 8, 12 miles a gallon. So you have one bus, they rate it at 130 miles or 9 hours, but depending on the weight. And it's not true electric, because to save some power, you're going to have a small diesel compartment of 5 gallons to give yourself AC. If not, you're going to lose 20%. So certain things like that, you know, all taken into consideration. It's better than, you know, a clean air diesel, a CNG and all that kind of stuff, but you're still going to have diesel to do something, you know, to cool or heat that vehicle without challenging the battery. So my little carts, those GEM carts made by Polaris, we're doing aftermarket and putting a small battery in there to run a fan or a heating unit, so I don't compromise the amount of time that I can go need be. So those are things that we're learning along the way as we go electric. I see a hands there with Carol and John.
John?
Yeah, Marcus, thank you. I have lost the bubble on which of these programs that we've implemented are going to survive after the Hillman Garage is finished.
Yes.
So I know we have the circulator, we have the Go, Annapolis Go, we have you called them GEM carts, I think. We have the electric boat. Obviously, I just learned we're converting the circulator to electric, which is fine. I'm a frequent circulator rider, so I will report back on that as I experience it. But I'm just curious, which of all those things are long-term for Annapolis and which are tied solely to the Hillman Garage?
John, that's a really good question. And as we look at our nomenclature of, we're trying to rebrand what we called the circulator before. Free downtown shuttle, magenta shuttle, that kind of thing, that will be there because it has been for like the last 10 years. And remember, $1 that was free, and where we try to reroute it going West Annapolis and realigned it, that will be there. That's a part of Annapolis Transit fixed route service. Bird bikes and scooters, I'm sure they'll still stay around. That's not a part of really a transit operation, but it'll still be there because that started up when the Hillman Garage was coming down or being built. Annapolis Go is a part of the whole rebuild. What we're doing right now, if you keep your eyes open for the end of this week or early next week on RFP on the street, that we're going to be doing a what do I say? Micro transit on demand. So the Annapolis Go name is owned by the city of Annapolis, and there's something you'll hear TAAS, TAAS or SAAS, and what TAAS is like transit as a service. SaaS is like a software as a solution. What we want to do is the RFP will put out for a software that we can take reservations that will be like Annapolis Go. Annapolis Transit employees, the city of Annapolis, we're using our vehicles and our employees to do just that. As Alderwoman Pindell Charles will know that her counterpart, Alderwoman Tierney, had some seed money so we can do a pilot test a couple of years ago, just before all this happened. So we'd like to do a pilot. That's what you'll see out for the RFP, to do what Annapolis Go is doing. and that'll be the same thing. So John, your question is very valid, like what will still be there? The Magenta Shuttle, if it gets renamed or rebranded, that'll still be there. We'd love to grow that business. As you know, we have 2 buses in the morning during rush hour and in the afternoon. Only one on Saturday, but it's on a 10-minute or really 20-minute loop. But when there's 2 out there, it's every 10 minutes. It's really carrying quite a few people and connecting a lot of the businesses and relieving the pressures of downtown and all. But we do want to look at the underserved, because there's some pockets within the city that may not justify having a fixed route, even if it's every 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or every hour. But when you look at on-demand microtransit and putting together what you look at Annapolis Go, I don't like to use the word watered down Uber or Lyft, but it kind of is, only because Uber and Lyft, you put your location finder on right now, and wherever you may be right now, they're going to come to where you are and take you where you're going. So Annapolis Go is going to give you a geofence that's going to be nearby where you are. It's not like 3 miles away, but it could be 2 blocks away. So the same thing when you look at putting those kind of things together, kind of look at what Flex Feeder is in Montgomery County. They have 2 zones, and they're the largest county in the state of Maryland, and they have a pretty successful way of doing it with their own employees, and they got the software as a solution. So Montgomery County employees are operating this service. That's what we like to do. The contract for Annapolis Go expires on or about the middle of July, 15th, 17th, 20th or so. The garage is still slated to be open, let's just say before the 4th of July. So it could be June 30th or even July 3rd. And even if it's only 1 level, 2 level, 3 levels, but the 5th level, hopefully a little later on than that. But John, I hope that answers your question. What are these components of what's going on now, while the garage is being rebuilt, and what we envision? I don't have a whole lot of information about the ferry, but the grant money that's coming much later, and then the stuff that goes along with it. But 6 months after the garage is done, after the fall boat show, is when it's slated to start working on City Dock. So after all that,
thank you. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think it's after the boat show. So that just kind of get through all those. Alderwoman Pindell Charles, did you hear anything great different than what I mentioned?
No, I have not, Mr. Director Moore. We're hoping for that target date as well.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thanks. And I'd like to extend my thanks to you, Marcus, for a very nice meeting that we had. 3 of us from the board had a chance to sit down with you and exchange views on a broad variety of topics, and I think it was very helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for
Kurt,
coming out.
in regard to that, may I ask Marcus to briefly, even if only reference by name, put before the full board the information that you gave us about the historic action that was taken by the board to seek funding for, and I apologize for my senior brain point at this point, to seek funding for an issue need in Annapolis transportation. What did we talk about at that meeting that was so fascinating? I'm sure that John Giannetti, I think he's still at this meeting, will remember what that initiative was, when the board could consolidate itself as kind of an administrative fundraising entity and go after those funds, which are regionally based, I believe. And what are they geared to?
I'm not sure.
It's what Kwaku went out and found information about and gave it to Kurt. And John, if you remember, speak up, please, because it seemed like a continuingly viable thing that the board could do in a proactive way improve, was it parking we were talking about? Was it?
I thought you were talking about a survey that is to be done for route realignment and reoptimization. Isn't that what it was about?
Yeah, because when you guys met with Carol, Elizabeth, and Kurt, John, I don't think you were there, but Kwaku did come in and out, and I think we might have been talking about the TDP.
Yeah, right,
The last
right.
one.
And John wasn't there because I'm referring to it historically. John would have worked on it when we did it as a board more proactively several years ago.
Okay. With the TDP years ago, it started in 2017 or 18, but was completed in the spring of 2019. The new one is going to be, is being budgeted for to do every 5 years, where interviews were done or research was done with the traveling public. Maybe that's what we're thinking of.
Yeah, that's probably why I'm so vague about it, because it's not a specific fact aspect of transit itself or transportation, but it was something relevant to how we overviewed, how we looked at the larger picture of the problems.
And just for general information, Marcus, my understanding is that the purpose of that exercise is basically route reorientation and reoptimization. Is that correct?
Yes, that would make sense. Yeah, absolutely. Every 5 years to kind of look at, what we could do, need to do for, let's just use an example. The orange route is the least performer. The busiest route obviously is our green route. But looking at what we can do and recommendations for things like a microtransit, on demand. The county's doing something similar with the South County Connector, bringing in folks to connect with other services going north or around around Anne Arundel County. But they will study, these are transit planners of what's going on within the county, specifically Annapolis, and make recommendations that will be presented to the city council for recommendations for improvement. And the last one was the spring of 2019. So we are due. And I think that we'll start up in the fall to do what Carol's asking, to revisit a survey of what we need to do. And Fare Free will be very much a part of how that is done and how it gets funded, how that all works. And, they'll come up with a recommendation to be presented for vote.
Okay.
Well, my point is just raising awareness on the part of the other board members that this option exists for us to use proactively.
Yes.
It's money as well, right?
Yes, for sure. Yes. Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
I'd like to move on to the next item. The next item is just to tell you where we are on board vacancies. We have 4 vacancies at the moment. The mayor has been alerted and they are working on it. I know of 2 individuals who are interested in the at-large slot. Wards 4 and 7 are still uncovered, and we don't yet have an academy representative, but that'll be worked on. Now for reports, I'll just do the first one on bicycles. The only thing I have relates to House Bill 519, which was to reverse the default setting in state legislation, state law regarding the use of bicycles on sidewalks. We testified, John Corrin and I and one other person testified before the General Assembly on that bill, sponsored by Dana Jones, our one of the members of our local delegation. It was a really interesting conversation. There was great enthusiasm, great support from both political parties. The committee passed it and went to the House, and it passed nearly unanimously. So it has gotten through one house of the legislature and is now passed over to the Senate. The challenge now is to get the attention of the Senate. Many things in the Senate die for lack of time to consider them, not because there is any opposition. We don't expect any opposition on this. And so we just have to get their attention. That's all I have on bicycles. The next item.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
yes, regarding the Senate side, I'm sure you contacted Senator Elworth.
Yes, prior last year and then once this year. She's not on the right committee, unfortunately. This goes to a committee that she is not a member of, but maybe she has a way of of lighting fires where they need to be lit.
Because we've got several senators in our Anne Arundel County delegation. So you might want to find one of the ones from the Anne Arundel County delegation.
Yes. Yeah.
Senator Bidle might be someone.
Right. I need to look into her memberships too.
Yeah, she's a senior senator, so I'm sure she carries a lot of weight.
Yes. Thanks for the suggestion.
Certainly.
All right. The next three items are more to stimulate any contributions that you may be moved to make. I'm not aware of a lot of action on any of them, but electric vehicles, Tom may have something to say. The only thing I can say is that I'm the proud owner of my first electric vehicle, and so I've learned a lot. Learning it is only slightly more complicated than operating a supercomputer to compute thermonuclear fusion reactions. But we're getting there, and it's starting to feel comfortable. Does anyone have anything on electric vehicles?
Nope.
Okay.
Hey,
And Marcus,
let me add, can I say
sure,
something?
John?
Yeah, thank you. One of the things I was wondering about, it came up on my citizens association was, are we doing anything to help promote and give people the resources they need in order to, have the homeowners association doesn't have any way in my little community, which is part townhouse and part single family houses. We don't have any places to charge our vehicles, and the homeowners association doesn't have anything to do. They don't know where to go. They're pretty resource free as far as doing that. I figure as a transportation board, we might be able to point them in the right direction so that we can promote, I think, electric vehicle use in some of the townhouse communities and, even apartment communities that we have around the city.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, John. I noticed that these things are going in, if slowly.
Yeah.
But it's tough. They're going to have to make arrangements for not only physical installation and access, but how are they going to pay for it?
Right.
Is it going to be free to residents? Is it going to be charged? Is there a lot of overhead in figuring out how much and how to bill people for use? So there's a major thing going on. And I do anticipate that if you look at apartment dwellers, for example, charging infrastructure is going to be one of the amenities that makes the difference in whether or not an apartment is rentable.
Right.
So to some extent, the market forces are going to take care of this, but in the meantime, we've got a severe problem in providing for charging infrastructure, especially in situations like the one you just mentioned.
Well, and also, Mr. Chairman, you're exactly right. One of the things I think is that a lot of times, and Annapolis is a very unique community in that you have a lot of people who do have the resources in order to have electric cars, but they might still be in a townhouse. And the thing is that they don't have any way to work with the townhouse association to put even their own charging system in. If they're willing to pay for it themselves, there's not a regulation that allows them to do it. And so we should, as a board, maybe come up with a policy or maybe some sort of a stance and saying that, listen, we want these things to happen, and we'd like to encourage all sorts of associations to do whatever's necessary to allow people to increase the amount of ownership of electric vehicles and including the charging mechanisms at their residence,
All right, let's put that on our to-do list to come back to see what action we might take that would be helpful.
Yeah.
The other problem that we've already talked about is people who don't live in an apartment or a house which even has that possibility.
Right.
If you take people who park on a city street, for example, it's difficult and then sometimes illegal to run a wire across the sidewalk in order to charge your car. So there are big problems.
Right.
Next thing is rail
Yes,
transport.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, yes, got a statement to make. Alderman Savage, who's a member of our Transportation Standing Committee for the council, he recently purchased an electric vehicle. So you may want to reach out to him to get some guidance, advice, information, that sort of thing.
Yes,
ask
I have
him to come
talked.
to
I
the
have
next-
talked to Rob about that already. He owns not one but 2 electric vehicles, so
okay.
he's gone overboard.
My hand is not working. Can I say something?
Hi there. Yes.
At the last Transportation Committee meeting, I don't know if you were still there, I
Yeah.
think, Bert. I brought up the fact that what was the city going to do relating to the charging of these vehicles? Not everybody's going to want to take their car down to the city garage and leave it there to be charged. And we also have the thing about leaving cars in the charging station when they've already been charged. So my question was, the very thing that Kurt said, I live in a house on a street, but I don't have a driveway. So therefore, I don't mind putting in a charging station in my home,
Right.
as my next door neighbor has actually. But it means I've got to run the wire across the sidewalk, which is a safety hazard, or could be a safety hazard. So I asked them if they had thought at all about how they were going to handle this particular situation. And they had not. In fact, Karma commented that the city doesn't care where you get your gas. It doesn't care where you get your electricity for your car. But that's not the point. The point is the safety issue of running that wire from your home to your car. Now, granted, you could buy those tent things you put over electric wires and whatever, but I think it's something this city, any city has to truly think about if we're going to, you want everybody to go to electric vehicles, because Jim and I figure that our next car is going to be an electric vehicle of some sort, whether it's a hybrid or a fully electric. So that's a very valid question for us. So I think it's something the city truly needs to think about.
Here
And
we
I
have an
brought it up to
opportunity
Mr.
we have
and-
an opportunity for creative larceny here, in the sense that cities, especially in California, have faced this problem already. And I feel confident that they are coming up with solutions which we might be able to copy.
Right.
Well, that would be good, but we're not good at copying, and very good at copying. But what I'm meaning is Ron Savage was there and he was bored with my question rather than, gee, it's something we really need to think about,
Actually, you've keyed up a great idea, Beth. I think we should outlaw the charging of vehicles from homes and residences and require everyone in the city to come use the downtown garages to charge their vehicles. And while they're there, they will use our restaurants and our shops and all those
Well,
things we've been trying to get them to use anyway.
Yeah, you'll get them to not
That's
buy
what it is.
electric cars.
Okay, but the garage, we're building a garage that its use in 10 years won't keep up with the electric vehicle demand. And so why they put such limited infrastructure on electric vehicles? I mean, I don't even think they ran the tubes so you can put the whole garage to electric vehicles, in 10 years time. I mean, silliness, absolute silliness. Sorry, I'll shut up.
I mean, the wire's not there.
Why?
the-
You're part of the transportation
I
board. It's
think
a
it
valid
only
question.
represents 25% of the garage will have electric vehicle charging, right? So
Yeah.
you're talking about a garage that's supposed to have a lifetime of what, 30, 40 years? And in 10
50.
years, if we follow California's lead, right? We're going to be requiring everybody to purchase electric vehicles, which means in 20 years' time, everybody will need access to charging. So how is it that, we're building out this garage and not making sure that there is conduit put in place for it to be completely converted to electric vehicles?
Now, Elvia left our board and is doing some sort of consulting to the city on this subject, but I don't know exactly what she's doing.
Oh, she's not on our board anymore?
No,
Oh,
that was 2
Okay.
months back. I missed a meeting and that was 2 months back. Did you miss that one, Elizabeth?
I must have. Yes, Beth, thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks. Rail transit, we heard from our speaker today, and there was some discussion about rail transit to, important places like BWI and the airport. I have nothing to say, but I just highlight it as something we probably should be talking about. Anybody have any thoughts before we move on?
So Kurt, I know given my role that you want me to lead the charge on this. And I would just say my opening position on rail is that those railroad tracks have been covered over and demolished years ago. I mean, so I'm not even sure who owns them. I think there was a sad point in time when people could pick off rail in their backyard for a very small price and allow them to build parking garages. I mean, West Street is a prime example, right? The rail that was running back behind West Street is all but gone. And then we also have the rail that went from here up to Baltimore, which is now a wonderful bike path. And any of the access points, which would be the bridges over all our waterways to really recreate that structure, sort of gone. So I'm more than happy to look into it and study it, but I really feel that, that ship has sailed, to use a good Annapolis phrase, because it would be very, very hard to get that infrastructure back to do it. Carol had a very interesting point about the buses. The buses being one directional as opposed to a loop. And I think that is something we should probably sink our teeth into, because I do take the commuter bus to DC and back. And I find it very, very easy. But there are days if I am in DC and I don't have children to run home to, but somebody once joked, there's one mid-afternoon bus that you can get on and they call it the sick bus. You get the phone call from school and you got to run back from the office. But for the most part, you've got to come in and you've got to get on a bus by 7:30 to get in the office by 9. And then they don't run the buses until the afternoon when they do the reverse. But in the meantime, the buses are going. They come to Annapolis, pick you up, take you to DC. That bus might actually come back to Annapolis to do a second run. They certainly do a loop. They're not necessarily going and parking in DC and sitting there all day and then waiting to come back. So I would like to explore Carol's issue, but I only raise it in the fact that the number of people on the bus are so limited. I'm on a bus that runs every 15 minutes and there are 10, 12 people on that bus, maybe. So I really, from just even a passenger point of view, can't fathom large regional rail transport in and out of DC or between Annapolis and Baltimore, or even the BWI airport. Now, you have to also remember my point of view. Westchester County, I was, on a train that ran every 10, 12 minutes during commute hours and ran every half hour in non-commuting hours in and out of Manhattan. So, I've seen it in action and people rely on it and they use it. So we'd have to probably really see sizable demand before we could get traction on the issue. And then we'd also have to tackle just, are the rails available? And then we could go to Marcus Moore and say, hey, Marcus, have you got 2 million for some train sets per train set? So
do you have any thoughts on recreation of bus links between here and the Orange Line at New Carrollton, and also eventual extension of the Orange Line out in our direction?
But that's light rail. I don't know about you. I'm not getting on light rail between here and New Carrollton. I'll just drive to New Carrollton.
I meant the metro system.
I know.
That's light rail.
It's light rail. It's so it's not catenary. It's The electric is underneath, it's limited in its mileage capacity. It will never be super fast or efficient. Diesel would be faster, greenhouse emissions, shoot me. So lots of fun issues when we start digging into rail, but it'll all be based on Marcus's budget. So if Marcus has a good, 20, 30 billion, he's going to go get out of the IIJA for us to put in this rail. Let's go.
Was that with a B?
Yeah, that's big.
You heard right.
I'm just guessing. But I think it's big.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, lots of fun issues. I think it might be dead on arrival, but let's certainly codify it. Why don't we, at least what the issues would be, what people ought to be thinking about, what they ought to look at, and what some alternatives might be, if that's fair.
Thanks. The next item on the agenda, I think, was already covered, so I will move on to the new business part of the agenda as we go around the table. If there is new business you would like to introduce or thoughts that you would like to make before we wrap up, this is your chance. Vince?
I don't have anything, no, thank you.
All right, John Purnell?
I've been waiting to get a representative from the Naval Academy to relate this story. But being one of the, I guess now Magenta Line riders, I just learned I have to call it that. I actually watched an exchange between the circulator drivers and actually the circulator passengers and a Naval Academy bus. The Naval Academy bus was blocking the circulator's stand with the Westin Hotel. And when we went to them and said, hey, you're parked here, this is where the circulator parks, can you move up? They refused. So I've wanted to pass that along to whoever becomes the new rep. But Marcus, I thought since you're here, you'd want to hear that. I can't remember the name of the driver. I don't think it was Chad, but it might have been Chad. But I was just appalled that this Naval Academy, and it was a Naval Academy bus.
Navy has weapons.
So uncivil as to say, no, I won't get out of the way when I'm parked in someone else's space.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, we gotta be better neighbors with that kind of stuff as far as sharing that real estate. Because we're only there for a minute. We stop and go. We don't have a dwell time in there at all. But John, if you get a chance, if you can shoot me an email, I can take a look at it. We got some really good drivers that try to take care of our customers as best we can, and the only way we'll get better is to learn those kind of situations that happen, and we can kind of escalate it as we can.
Yeah, I had the Naval Academy bus number or something, but I don't think I have it anymore.
Do you remember how
But,
long ago, John, it was?
I'll have to do a little research. It's probably been 2 months because I had literally been waiting because I thought the most congenial way to talk about this was inside the board to the rep from the Naval Academy. I thought that'd be perfect. But now I'm sort of stuck just telling you guys about it. I'll try and get some details, the specific night, and I will get you an email, Marcus, describing the incident.
Thank you so much, because I think they may have contract drivers to do Naval Academy and all that kind of stuff, so it might not be because I know some folks at the Naval Academy that work, that deal with special events there, but the drivers, I'm not sure how that works. That's a good question, but we can check into it.
Well, let's let the Naval Academy check into it.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, true. We'll check into it and give it to them for sure.
There we go.
Yeah.
Good. We'll try to get somebody onto the board then.
Thank you.
Kara?
I did send around the New York Times article, and I'm sorry, everyone, there were some family issues this past month. So I will endeavor to go back and pull that down as a PDF so you can read it. But what I was sharing with you is really sort of a layer on to the presentation we had 2 or 3 months ago about pulling back from requirements that developers must have a certain amount of parking and letting market forces take play. And that seems to be aligned with people that are sort of advocating for more green space and less parking, just as a reflection of the change in the way we shop, the change in the way we commute, the change in our demographics, and also the need really to have more runoff absorbent space. So I'm sorry that was sent as a link and you weren't all able to access it, so I'll send that back around. And then I don't know how I missed this, but somehow the red line doesn't go down West Street anymore. Anyone?
I'm sorry, the red line down west?
The red line, wasn't there a red bus line that would go down West Street? There used to, so parole to West Street, you know, like if you wanted to rent a vehicle from Avis and you wanted to get on the bus line to get that.
It's green. It's the green line.
That was the green.
Green route, yeah.
Green or purple, depending upon the time of day.
Oh, that's very true. The purple.
Okay,
depending
well,
on time of
Marcus,
day.
if those are the two lines, let me tell you, they're not showing up on the transportation app, on the transit app that normally lists the bus
no.
lines.
You're absolutely right. And that's we're working with our MIT Management of Information Technology because the GTFS feed has expired. So our expert, we've been working on that since last summer. You're right.
So I paid a $20 Uber fare when I could have just stood out on West Street and waited for the bus to come by.
Oh yeah, the green, yeah, same green. Yep, yep, it's still there. I'm sorry.
Well, it wasn't on my transit app, so I really didn't think I had it.
Yeah, no, none of ours is showing up, and I don't know what happened last
Actually, no,
summer.
that's not true. The yellow line that goes up Rao Boulevard and around, oh goodness, I haven't.
Yep.
Yeah, because
You're right.
that's a county bus.
That's the county bus now.
Oh, so the county buses were, that makes sense because they were really odd routes. It was up Forest Drive and okay.
The county with the
Marcus,
yellow and the
you might
gold.
get on that. You might get on that. Can I help you in any way?
Well, yeah, no, that's it's a technical GTF. It's our management information technology of trying to get it together. They've been working on it for like 6 months. I don't know how the feed expired, but I don't know that. I'm not an IT person, but we have some very bright people that are working with Google. I don't know how it expired while nothing has changed. Nothing has changed, and we've been working on that transit app, which is a predictor that will show you the schedule.
I rely on it left and right. I use it. By the way, it works on the commuter buses.
Yep.
Clearly, it's now
everything. Yeah, all over the country. Yep, all over the country. It just stopped last summer. But if you can and you need help right now, it's okay to call our office, which is open right now, to ask, can you tell me the next bus leaving from Weston?
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
That's all I have right now, because
And Tara, it's important to note, and I think Marcus used the term, it's a predictor.
yes,
It uses schedules.
Right.
It does not know where the buses are.
Well,
So
but
don't
that's
think
because-
it's gonna, but
No.
the circulator app does.
Let me share that the transit app, if you opt in to participate as a passenger, it will use my phone to say, oh, look, someone just got on the bus. It's now here. And so if you opt in as a passenger to agree to share your information that you got on a bus or off a bus, it will track you, and therefore it will give you better information.
that
FYI.
is really interesting, Tara, to see. One of the things that we've also put in the budget is for AVL, as John's mentioning, the Magenta bus has real time. So if you look at, Translock and download it, you'll see a dot that's really moving right now.
Right.
And that's what we're going to have on all of our buses, once, maybe the fall of this year, regardless of the transit app that, like you said, it's around many other communities in the United States, but we will have this AVL, automatic vehicle locator, real time. As long as my dispatchers put bus 1854 on that green route, you're going to see it. It's not going to show that it's in my yard. Those are the kind of things. So that'll be a real time versus what John just mentioned, a predictor. We'll work on that. So more technology going forward, so you can see real time Annapolis Transit where we actually are. That's
all right. Well, I guess you just need to turn the system on first, but hopefully this helps you. You can give some good feedback, but if you need help, if you need someone to speak to how it's working or not working, please let me know.
Oh yeah, please. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's
Thank you.
great.
I'm good, Kurt. That's unless there's questions.
Okay, great. Phone apps with real-time information are obviously the way to go. My pet peeve is that most of the bus stops have no information whatever, not even which buses come to the bus stops. And it would be nice if very crude 18th century info could be posted.
Yeah.
I love the QR codes, and the visitors love them.
They
visitors, they don't have to learn anything. They just point and click, and they love it.
that's working with the Magenta, and a lot of the things we're thinking about for the future for better bus stop sign signage or
Mhm.
amenities. With the schedule, as long as people don't spray paint or whatever, we got to keep changing them out. But John and Kurt, that's very much true with what we want to do going forward.
I'm sorry, I do have a follow-on question, Marcus, because that was interesting, John. So if I do the QR code at a bus stop, which I have done on that line, and yes, then it pulled it up and I could see immediately where they were and I knew how long for it to come. Does it also say to the driver, there is somebody at X Street?
No.
I've never ever heard that discussed,
Just
but I'm
curious
kind of
whether
finding it
says-
interesting because you might be able to do that.
Right,
Right.
right. Like if you're lollygagging, there is somebody, at, this street. waiting
The
for-
answer is no, because the QR code has no way of knowing it got flashed.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea and I'd love to keep exploring it, but not with our current setup.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is Taylor Waters. Nothing? Okay. Beth?
No, nothing for me.
All right. Tom Schock,
Nope, nothing from me, thanks.
John Giannetti.
Yeah, it's a surprise to no one that I have a couple items to talk about. I like Tara. What I was really surprised. I'm really excited about that app. If that's a common app, I don't know why the bus drivers that are driving for our city buses just aren't directed to put on the app on their phone and call themselves a passenger. And so anyone who uses the app will know where the Annapolis buses are. I mean, that way we could make sure that everyone knows where those buses are. But anyway, I think I think two things. I like that idea that we talked about earlier, Kurt, and maybe have a work group that I'd be willing to, either chair or be part of is to come up
please.
with about
Pick
the
up that
charging.
ball and carry it. That's wonderful,
Yeah.
John.
I'm willing to do that for sure. And also, I think something that we talked about before, I often think that the transportation board is a good accumulator of wishes, of transportation wishes. I think maybe the board together taking a time out and saying, here's a wish list of transit issues that we'd like to at least talk about. Like if I were to come up with the top 5 buses that I'd like a regular bus to BWI, one up to to the Hanover or Arundel Mills, and then one out to the green or the orange metro. If I had regular buses to that would really help our mobility, and I guess maybe ranking them is to say, well, if we're going to concentrate on one, which would we do? I mean, we need to get our buses, our mobility to the MARC line and make the MARC, get people back and forth that can get them to Washington and Baltimore easily, but there's no real easy way to get there, maybe to Odenton, and we had talked about that regional transportation, that the folks that I guess it was headquartered in Laurel were doing the regional transportation, and they wanted to include Annapolis as part of their system. And that's, maybe something to at least talk about. If we don't want to do it, that's fine, but at least have that discussion, because we would be part of a bigger system and it would be easier to get to, for instance, Columbia in that case. But that's that. And I think also, sometimes I know where transportation, we're thinking of mobility and we often, say bad things about cars, but really most of our, because Carol, you talked about it, Annapolis has isolated itself because of our, lack of mobility, lack of mass transit. So people tend to be reliant upon cars, and let's not ignore that. And so every individual who has a car and needs a car and uses cars, we are a transportation board. We should be concerned about them too, and sort of say, well, here's our priority list of road projects we'd really like to see, like maybe improving the timing of certain roads or things like that, because we currently have them and there's lots of money being spent. Why not make sure we get our priorities at least talked about? And that wouldn't be a bad idea either.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Charles Brooks and David DeQuinzio are not here tonight. Carol?
I don't have much to say except the good news that I'm finally meeting with the executive director of Parole Town Center, and she knows that what's my agenda. All of what my agenda is about transportation around the center, but also on Reba Road and connecting to Annapolis. And you all probably know, especially Marcus, that I have a lot of interest in the way the regional system is developing de facto here between Annapolis and Anne Arundel County. Marcus, if you're still here, my latest take on the way things are running is that the county system, I wrote it to Cromwell recently, is smoothing out its wrinkles. It's getting very efficient and fast, and it really is becoming a way to get to Baltimore, a much faster way than going on the 70 bus. And it's being run, as far as I can tell, efficiently and regularly on the hour. So all of that, which I could go into hundreds of details about because, you know, I'm riding those buses, what they add up to, I think, is that developing right under our noses is Annapolis's hub. You know, the multimodal hub that we've talked about for a decade now is actually happening. And it's happening at the mall, it's happening with county buses, it's happening with the mysterious commuter academy bus that goes one way but doesn't go the other way. It's happening with the Annapolis buses. And Marcus has a lot in his, on his table, a lot to refine and promote and work with other entities about, specifically the county to begin with. But I want to be encouraging that, you know, despite its lack of consolidation and real and organization right now, it's really happening. And somebody like me can benefit from it, and hopefully more and more people can. I got from Annapolis to Cromwell so fast that I was caught off guard and almost didn't get off the bus in time to catch the light rail. And that's the kind of connection we want.
That's good news. And my counterpart, Sam Sneed, I talk to him pretty regularly. Maybe we can get him as a guest panelist, maybe sometime in May.
Yeah.
I'll reach out to him and see what we can do, because we were talking about other efficiencies of scale. Kurt.
That would be very helpful. Yeah,
yeah.
if you can make that happen, that would be great.
Yep, we'll definitely try to make that happen sooner than later.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. I hope you've had as much fun as I did tonight. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, all in favor? Thanks, everybody, for your
Good night, everyone.
contributions. Good meeting.